Zkipster is the guest management platform used by top event teams for everything from guest lists to seating charts and online invitations. If you're looking for next-generation event software that helps deliver perfect guest experiences, head over to Zkipster's website. It's Zkipster, ZKIPSTER.com to try a free event.
Are you a follower?
9, 8,
Okay, so we're gonna call the ad.
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Editor-in-Chief Beth Kormanik.
Hi, David.
Hey, Beth. Here we are, another GatherGeeks podcast.
Our guest today is Matt Vaile, who is the offline marketing producer of the e-commerce platform Shopify. He believes that events are more than a marketing tool. They are products in themselves. Shopify's events are essentially user conferences with a focus on learning and development and work to create communities.
Yes. One interesting thing about Shopify is that they're on a rocket ship from the point of view of their share prices, and they are poised to be in the level of one of the real fast movers in the world of e-commerce. And they need to get people up to speed quickly, and part of their marketing mix is education.
So Vaile will be discussing conference, content, and logistics, and getting into the nitty-gritty, such as, the height of the stage and where the stairs leading to the stage should go, lighting strategy and presentation design and speaker coaching. So if you work on conferences or if you want to and don't know where to start, this is a really good place to begin.
If you're driving, you will have the need to want to take notes, but you may have to listen to it again at your desk.
Fair warning.
Be careful.
Okay, terrific. Well, then let's get to it and take a listen.
Okay, so Matt, welcome to GatherGeeks, this special edition on sparking change. And my co-host here, Alex, is going to ask you a couple of questions to get the ball rolling and tell us a little bit about the premise of what we're trying to do here today.
Sure. So thanks for being with us, Matt. This campaign, as David just mentioned, is called Sparking Change. And the idea of this is to look at an event beyond, I'd say, the boundaries that you might typically associate with an event of what happens in the lead up of the planning going to the event and what happens on site the night itself, the big event. But we're also now curious is looking at what happens when the guests go home and how do you use events as a tool to lead to an impact that lasts after the lights go off and after people do go home. But how do you make an event spark change into the future? So we'll explore that from different angles, but that's the premise that we're looking at here.
Okay. So let's start with, just from the bigger picture before we get into who you are and the whole Matt story. How do you think about when you do an event, how you spark change?
I always think of events, or like anything that I'm doing from like a story perspective. I like creating a cohesive story from start to finish, but also making space, within that event or that, conference or trade show, for people to tell their own stories so that everyone feels, welcome in something that we've created and, feels accounted for. And that's kind of where I think large picture storytelling and then down to the granular details of how to translate that story into an experience.
And you've got a theater background, which we'll go into in a little bit.
Yeah.
So you're approaching it from
very theatrical space. Yeah.
Is your whole premise about events from the theatrical perspective?
I think that's where my passion and my background for telling stories or conveying an emotion comes from. So that's how I enter most of the work that I do, whether it's an event or even things like graphic design or even tablescapes. Anything that I touch, I think of it from a theater or performance background. And I think of anyone that's attending an event as an audience member. Yeah.
And so, okay, you attend a lot of events.
Yeah.
You have attended a lot of events. What sucks about them? Let's start off with that.
What sucks about events?
When you see an event, because we're always over super judgy, right?
Oh, I always say it's the cocktail hour at a wedding. The cocktail hour of a wedding is when the bride and groom go get their photos done, but everyone else sits around and judges. That's my favorite part of any wedding. But yeah, I think going to a lot of events, you see a lot of the same things, and being inside inside the industry, you see a lot of like the prefab things done in a very prefab way.
Okay, what is that? Yeah, be real. Pretend we're texting and you say, "Oh my God, that sucks."
A lot of like pop-up banners, which is something that I like detest with a passion.
Rule number 1: no pop-up banners.
That was actually my first day at my job. Was like rule number 1: we never do pop-up banners. We're not a pop-up banner company. That's not what we do.
What does a pop-up banner say?
A pop-up banner says, I printed this last minute and I showed up because I paid the money to be here, but like I don't really care whether you stand and read this pop-up banner or not. Like I get it from a signage perspective. You need to tell a story. It's just the most like manila envelope way of telling the story.
Okay,
right?
What is the matte version of a pop-up?
The matte version of a pop-up might be a little bit more expensive than a pop-up banner.
We have no budget issues right here.
Great. Those are my 2 favorite words. No budget.
No budget issues.
No budget issues. Yeah.
3 words.
Unlimited money. I always think of like even if you're using things that are prefabricated or like pop-up things, how can you use those to like really bookend the piece you're trying to tell someone? Or like what are you saying? Like why should someone stop? So I do really theatrical, very like creative, very set decked out spaces. So an example would be we've been at IRCE, which is a internet retailer
in
conference.
English, what does that mean?
Internet retailer conference in Chicago. It's a really big one for like the calendar year for the people in the industry. And you go there and you see a lot of prefab spaces, a lot of like hanging banner signs, and people are using them in creative ways, and they're very colorful and they're eye-catching. But what we've done in the past is we actually built a full ski chalet and a snowboard shop, because that's like the story that we were trying to tell. Like Shopify started as a snowboard store, and Toby, the founder, was looking to sell snowboards online and wondering, how do I sell snowboards online? And when the summer came, this is a story he tells better than I, but when summer came around and no one's buying snowboards, he was like, well, actually the product that we've developed, this online sales platform, is what we should be selling, and we should help merchants, small business owners and merchants and anyone looking to sell anything online or in person. How can we help them get access to this too? So we built the ski chalet, and we told the story of like, what if Shopify was still a snowboard store, and we built that snowboard store, and we actually had it snow in the event itself, which I don't know if the show, like the show organizers, loved that I made it snow inside, but everyone remembers that event, right? We've told a complete story from top to bottom, and when people go home, they'd actually then become storytellers for our brand. They know why we exist. They know they had a great experience with us, and then they'll call us later and say, oh, you were at this event and you were the snowboard shop. Like we created a unique experience out of.
So you're taking total credit for the stock going from like 145 to 250.
I'm not taking any credit for that. This is a few years ago, so I'm not taking any credit for that.
Tell us a little bit about this story. I mean, I have to, full disclosure, I am an investor, not a big investor, but a small investor, and I found out about it the day that you had Prime Minister Trudeau at one of your events that you were involved in.
Yes.
And this is a year or two later. And I think a year later, maybe.
A year after that.
A year after that, and the stock went through the roof. So I'm very happy to have you here to help promote shareholder value. But at the same time, we want to find out what makes the DNA of Shopify and the event part of it important to the strategy of the company and sparking change for the company itself.
Yeah, so overall, the perspective is like leveling the playing field. What Shopify wants to do is we want to level the playing field so that for anyone that wants to sell
something online
or in person or anywhere in between. Okay. Anywhere your customers are is where we want to enable you to sell. But like, the reason that I love working at this company is because we are helping small, medium, large businesses actually be competitive in the space against some of the behemoths. So one of the event series that we do that I like, one of my all-time favorite events that we do is actually called Shop Class, where we teach people, merchants can sign up, and we take it to different cities across North America. We've done them in England as well, and I know the team is working on figuring out where they're going this year. But every year we do this event, and we bring people in for like classes and education, but it's also a community building thing. We've again let people tell their stories about what they're selling online, why they started a business, and a lot of people come to Shopify for various reasons. reasons. So it's appealing to anyone that has like that ambition to make change, right?
But your events are part of your strategy for growing the company.
Yes, events
so your
are definitely
CEO
a part of our strategy.
Would you say that your C-suite people are very much behind what you do?
Oh yeah, the events are like, it's our way of like, it's a tool that we use that's untraditional, right? So like a lot of like traditional marketing, like advertisements, billboards, TV spots, like tell you the highlights, right? Where we want to get deep into like figuring out what each segment of our customer base needs, and then actually providing events or services or like experiences for them. And our platform works for so many different people, and we also have like a whole partner ecosystem. So when we think of segmenting our audience, we really want to create custom events for each of those audiences that they feel and they know that they're supported by us. And it's really important. All of our execs love Unite, which is the event that you mentioned.
Go through the. Do you have certain personas and how you deal with your customer base?
I think we have to, because it's so varied. So even as a company, we do have Shopify and Shopify Plus. Shopify Plus is our more like enterprise software, and then Shopify is looking at the dreamer segment of people that are ambitious, that are looking to make change, that are looking to start their own business for various reasons. Anyone can start their own business. So we do segment our audience, and then our partners, we want to tell them they're part of our business strategy. They enable our merchants to do what they need to do. They make apps on our platform. So if we just tried to talk to all these people all the time with one message, it would be such a muddy message that I don't think anyone would find value in it. So right?
Give us a little insight into your event strategy as a corporation. Like, what do you normally do for your event world? In your event world,
the event world. It's a big question, but
we got plenty of time.
Yeah, I'm like counting down the clock. So our event strategy, we kind of take a look at how people are using the platform and what they need from us, and see where we can support, right? So whether we're building something, we're building a product internally to help someone achieve something in their business, we look at events in the same way as a product, actually, instead of like a marketing tool. So like Shop Class, for example,
that's one of the products.
Is a product, right?
And that's L&D. That's learning and development for the most part. And you make it kind of with a FUN.
Yeah, obviously everything I do is with fun. Same with like Unite. It's another product of ours. It's where we actually launch products and kind of like tell people the direction of where we're going, and that's really important for our partners and developer and partner.
And how big is that? Tell us what's the...
So last year it was 1,200 people in Toronto, and this year I think it's around the same number as well. Yeah, and last year we did it at Brickworks, and this year I don't know if it's...
And what does it look like?
It is a like conference style event. There's a main stage and then a bunch of different off stages, different track sessions you can go to based on what you're there to learn. But every part of that event actually levels up to the whole making commerce better for everyone. So we want to have it spark really engaging conversations. We want even the way we serve food to be interesting and engaging and make people like network and learn from each other, because that's the biggest thing about Unite is, one, we're telling you like new things and what we're up to, but we also want our partners, and some of the coolest things that come out of Unite is our partners actually working together to create better products for our merchants. So any way we can style the event for all the networking pieces, all of the offsites, all of the happy hours, any content that we do is kind of all towards that.
So this is for the app store people, like, in a sense. If you put it in Salesforce terms, or if you put it in other, these are the people that are creating your enterprises.
Yes.
And are they paying to come to this, or is this something where you guys, as part of your strategy?
It's a paid event.
It's a paid event.
It's a paid event. But it is live feed. Live feeds are available, and post-event content is available. So it's all accessible to the public as well. But
is it? And from your strategy point of view, does that mean that you have like a bigger budget to actually operate, or is it does the cost of the attendee cover, or is it just subsidized a little bit?
It subsidizes it a bit. The cost of the event is something we budget for every year. Yeah. It's more of the subsidizes the event. Yes, as you said.
Okay, so that's one. What's the customer facing one that you said you had Shop
Class? Yeah, so that one it is depending on the city and depending on the version of it. It is sometimes paid, but very low entry.
What does that look like for the experience? What's the experience for the attendee?
The experience for the attendee is we do one-on-one appointments with our gurus. So that's something you can access 24/7 by phone, email, or live chat. But a lot of people really want that in-person support. So we do offer one-on-one appointments. We offer classes and in things that like you might already know, like how to add a product to your store, but also like how to take better product photography, tips on like organic marketing strategy. And we bring in some of our partners to teach these classes as well, like SEO and conversion and all of those different things are available to merchants in these cities when we show up at Shop Class.
And what is the Shop Class? What is the end? What is the FUN part?
The fun part of Shop Class? I think a lot of the journey of an entrepreneur, and having been one myself in the past, you're kind of like always on your hustle. You're always like in your own space. And it's a very lonely activity to be an entrepreneur, and you get so invested in your business, and you want that support not only from us but from a community. So again, we really want to create these events in these cities to actually foster those communities of merchants that actually end up supporting each other beyond the event itself. So that's something that's why I love Shop Class the most, is because I hear these stories, or I follow up with merchants after, or like we follow each other on social after, and I see that they like, not only is they're more energized about the business and about what they're doing and how they're changing their own part of the world, but they're doing it with a community now, which they might not have had access to before.
Yeah, and so touching on that community aspect, do you find that it's challenging to position these kind of events for someone who might only know Shopify as a very digital experience, or think of it as an app practically, and not really think of that in real-world settings with real-world people and this community that you're speaking of?
Yeah, I think the people that come to Shop Class are kind of like a self-actualizing group. So there's a lot of people that use Shopify, and there'll be a number of people that we will only interact with online, and that's fine. That's what they're looking for. They might already have a community. They might already have access to different groups like this. They might work at a WeWork. Those people, like, they are welcome to these events, but these are like, I find that the people that are coming or have come to Shop Class in the past are a lot of the time it's like a side project. It's something that they found an opportunity. They've made a product that they love and they want to share it, but they don't really know how. So it's capturing a group of people that are looking for that community already. And the way we do that is like through marketing to. We market to everyone in that area that's using Shopify, but the messaging around it is come to this event, meet us in person, networking. There's always like inspirational stories from merchants that are in the same kind of vertical as you. So maybe we'll have an evening panel with medium to larger businesses in the fashion and apparel industry. So that'll bring a lot of people that are building their own maybe t-shirt shop or a accessory line, and they'll come to that event because it's a self-actualizing group of people looking for tips and tricks. But what they end up finding is that community of people that are also all kind of engaging in the same space they are.
Building a memorable experience for your guests means planning every detail right. Zkipster is the guest management platform designed to help you create the perfect experience, from impressive online invitations to seamless check-in at the door. Get started at Zkipster, spelled ZKIPSTER.com, for a free test event. So go through the structure of a Shop Class.
A Shop Class. Okay, so the structure of a Shop Class is actually mostly around the content pieces. So we build out different modules. So there'll be a morning and an afternoon. Sometimes there's a lunch and learn, which is a great opportunity for our partners to get involved and teach people how to do shipping or SEO, like I mentioned, things that like have very like geographical specific needs
Right,
sometimes
right.
too. So that's a great opportunity for them. And then the afternoon will be more classes. And these workshops are kind of ongoing. We kind of program them twice in a day at least, so that if you can only be there in the afternoon, because we know some people can't take a whole day off work. So if you're a 5,
They repeat.
So they repeat, so you can go back. And then in the evening, we normally do an open session that like anyone can come to, and it's more of just like a meetup with a panel discussion or some evening content.
And how the decor and the look and feel, is it a little bit more advanced than a typical open and draped thing?
Yeah, so we really want to like communicate how we look and feel and how our offices look and feel, which is very, very much like custom these experiences have been in the past. So we build pegboard walls to show off different products, different product photography. We've featured different products from merchants in that city before with like a touchpad buyable experience. We create one-to-one learning spaces for the guru appointments, which are like, because not everyone wants to openly share their struggles. We actually have to make those we're very cautious of where we program those and how they feel private and feel more like off to the side. And then anytime we get on stage, which is what I like, obviously being a theater person, I love being on stage. I really want to make sure that the stage itself too, like the height of the stage is not too high that you feel disengaged from the audience. A lot of the times we actually have all the stairs at the front of the stage.
Is this a Matt rule?
This is a Matt rule. These are Matt's stage rules.
Okay.
But for conferences, we like to have the stairs run across the entire front of the stage, so it feels like anyone from the audience could actually get up and be on the stage, regardless of if they're going to or not. It's telling you that like these stories are your stories, and at any moment your story could also be featured.
So it's
on
an
the stage.
inclusivity tip.
Yeah, most of the time I also like rounded edges for stages.
Why?
Because a square stage is just a border, whereas like a rounded curve lets you feel more open and more inclusive, and creates that it decreases the distance from the speaker to the audience member.
What about the Matt's rules on lighting and things like that?
Lighting. I have a whole like document that I can send you on my rules on lighting.
Well, just give us the high points.
But the high points are for focused content or like panels. I do like dimming the house lights, but I don't really love a blackout. I want people to be able to feel like they're part of a group of people and we're all on the same page. And especially for like evening content, I also love having the lights be up and bright and having people have cocktails and free to be in the space or wander around, like be very open. But for those most focused pieces, we do dim the lights in the audience and have very focused lighting. But any question and answer period, we always open up the lights. We want to see people's faces, right? Like whenever you're in a conversation, and when these people that are coming to these events are there for the in-person experience. If I wanted to just be an audience member, I could engage with us online. Right. So I want to make sure that we're looking at people's faces, that we're hearing people's stories, that we are communicating as a collective.
What are Matt's rules on presentations and PowerPoints and things like that?
Ooh.
I hit a hard sore point.
Yeah, I've done a lot of presentation design. I don't love a lot of text on a presentation. Anything that someone can read faster than you can say shouldn't be on the screen. Because again, it's about storytelling. So I use slides, or I encourage our teams to use slides as like narrative points in the story structure versus like showing off a quote. You should, if you love that quote as much as I know people love using quotes to like bulk up a presentation, and if you say, this is my favorite quote from this person, yet you have to turn and read it off a slide, like, I don't believe that it's your favorite quote from this person. I believe that you looked up a quote on X and put it on the slide. So that's like, I encourage people to have a picture of like the person that said it originally, or a section of the quote that really means something to you, but maybe say the whole thing, or just use the presentation and the design of the presentation as a minimal like guide for your audience to follow along, but it shouldn't be telling them the whole story before you can say it.
How about the guide of the day? Is it a MC? Is it a voice of God? What's
We've done
Matt
everything.
rules?
I've been the MC. I'm a showboat. I love being the MC.
Yeah.
At Shop Class, I've been the MC a few times. But I do love a voice of God. I do love setting the precedent at the beginning of even a talk, even one piece of content, to kind of like highlight what you're going to get out of this. Anytime that an audience doesn't know where it's going, or they don't have faith in the person to get them there. But if at the beginning of something you say, hey, I'm going to talk about these 3 things, and then your whole presentation, you actually go back to saying, these are the 3 things, and at the end go, I hope you took away these 3 things. That actually helps the audience feel confident that you are a subject matter expert. So the way I approach the voice of God or an MC, it depends on how casual or how formal the event is. I still want that voice to be that guide for the audience so they feel taken care of.
Does the audience, I don't know if that's the right grammar, does the audience need a guide or somebody does personality matter with these things? Because a lot of times these cold corporations, sometimes people don't even talk to anyone else.
Yeah, I feel like whoever's going to be that MC needs to be present in the room, needs to be the one connecting people, and the more open and the more excited the audience will always take visual cues and context cues from that voice, whether it's a voice of God or not. But an MC really does help at Shop Talk. It really helps people be able to go to that person, even to be like, I don't know which learning section I should do next. What would you recommend? And as the MC, you can say, well, what are you looking to get out of? Hopefully you know about each of those sessions. And they come to you as like a source then. Versus a voice of God, you really need to have a show guidebook and a bunch of other supporting materials. Whereas an MC kind of lets that feeling of a more casual, more community space be available to the attendees or the people in the room.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because the type of event that we're talking about is something that is formulaic from the sounds of it, but in a good way. That you want a good formula. You want something that's strong and repeatable. So with a repeatable format like this, what's your approach to honing that formula and improving it over time? Like, what do you do with event data in that sense? Yeah,
so I think we always collect feedback on the attendance numbers for each of these sessions, and people will tell you, because you've created this atmosphere, what they need to know. They want to know, oh, it'd be nice for you to have this in the future. We always send a feedback form, but actually most of the feedback comes right there in the room, which I think is a great way. Like, it's nice that the attendee feels so open and feels like they're part of this, that they also want to make it better. So a lot of the attendee feedback is like, oh, it'd be nice to do these more often, or oh, it'd be nice to have a community. And then most of the time they actually self-actualize and go, well, in this room, I'll collect I'll start a Facebook page, or anyone that wants to join a meetup, I'm going to host a meetup. So a lot of that feedback actually comes directly in this Shop Talk, in that kind of experience that we've created. So yeah, it's formulaic, but I feel like that's the nice part of the event, is that everyone feels like they've signed up for something, someone's taken the care to plan what they're going to do, and then they can actually relax and learn. If you're always worried about, oh, am I missing something, or oh, I don't know what class is going on in the other room, or oh, I don't know how long this lunch period is, you'll always be distracted by those things, and you won't absorb the information that you're there to get, and you won't feel like you've taken anything away from the event. So then the feedback when we've A/B tested different formulas of one day we didn't actually do the afternoon and morning sessions, and we got the feedback that actually I can't take a full day off, so some of the things in the morning I actually couldn't attend, which I really wanted to attend. So we send out all the speaker notes after, and we make sure everyone feels like they've got all the content, because that's what they're there for. But we then change our format dependent on that feedback.
Do you figure out the format, the amount of content? Is it minimal or is it maximum?
Oh, it's maximum. We've packed these days at Shop Class full of content, because there'll be a merchant that's just starting that wants to know how to add a product, how to set different variants of sizes, how to write a description.
So just because you're bored with something doesn't mean that the attendee is going to be bored with something. So that's a challenge in a lot of people with events.
Yeah, and this event will, because we're emailing and we're inviting everyone from that area, right? So say we did one in New York, and we email and invite select merchants in New York. But we're not inviting merchants. We don't know that they're all starting out, and we don't know that they're all selling thousands of dollars a week, right? So anyone can attend this event, and you're welcome to. We have to program content that will speak to those people and also let them know I don't need to go to session A. So we really have to be very descriptive of what we're going to tell them, and that's why it's important to have all of that structure.
Okay, so you've talked about the app world and the developers. You've talked about the users. What event strategy do you use for the recruitment of new people into the tent?
Honestly, shop class is one of those, like, a lot of new people come to that event
That haven't even bought.
No, and they're starting out, like, they have an idea.
Okay.
And they want to come and figure out how to make that idea real.
Okay.
Which I love hearing people, people's ideas are my favorite thing. I will sit down for hours and listen to people's ideas. I love it. And they're looking for that, is this the right fit for me? Is this going to scale with me? And the answer is yes and yes. But they're there to, like, learn, and, like, kind of that education piece is, like, if you know what we do and what we can do for you, then you'll sign up. Does
the face-to-face experience push people over the edge in many cases more than other techniques? Or is it just one of the channels?
I think it's dependent on the person. I, being a very one-to-one, very person, like, I love in-person meeting. I have gone to events in the past, and that has made me a believer. But I've also been target marketed on Instagram, and I've been a believer that way too. So it really, like, I think it depends on the attendee. But I think it's a very critical, events are critical in the path to becoming a convert. I'm not speaking in cult terms, which I probably shouldn't, but
in a B2B experience, your whole infrastructure is based on this software program that you developed.
and we really need to instill trust, right? And the way to trust, a lot of people need that in-person experience to build that trust, to build that connection, to know that they're going to be supported.
Okay, so how do you scale this? How does this? I mean, this is still a very small amount of people you're reaching in comparison, right? But is it the fact that you're doing it has a big impact?
I think the fact that we do it has a really big impact because we're enabling those merchants to become our storytellers, right? So if you have a really good experience with us, you're more than likely to go out and say, I went to this really amazing class, and they're community influencers. A lot of the people that come to these events have a connection already with other people that are looking to do the same thing, or they're part of the yoga community, or they're part of the dog community, or they're part of a craft group, or they sell, they're a drop shipper, whatever community they're part of. If we can enable people to become a storyteller and tell our story and tell their story and tell our collective story that, like, we've created together, they are more than likely to recommend us as a platform.
So as these people that are storytellers, and you talked about this with the trade show piece, the quality of the event becomes as important,
directly impacts that narrative.
as the learning.
Yeah.
And talk about that in terms of and advice you would give to other B2B players who may not have the budget, but you use ingenuity for a lot of this as well.
Oh yeah, I come from a very poor theater background. So my, like, thriftiness in my theater experience, I like a budget. I like a healthy budget, but I've done things with a very minimal budget.
Like what? Like what are the things? What are the things that you've pulling out of basically out of the air?
Well, my first year, one of my first projects at Shopify, I ended up, like, coming from the theater world. I've never been at a trade show event, and we were going to this trade show called Agenda, which is a streetwear trade show, and we built an event based around, like, Coleman coolers. And I stacked a whole bunch of Coleman coolers. I got some AstroTurf because the event space itself, like, we were directly talking to people in the skate and surf industry and saying, like, we're a platform that you can sell your t-shirts or products on. So we built literally a backyard barbecue vibe in a 20 by 20 space from Amazon ordering, because I wasn't working with, I have never worked with an agency before, and I was hired, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? So and it was really successful because we tapped into the idea of, like, what the culture of that event was. And we stood out because we did, I researched and I was able to say, okay, we are not going to show up in this very slick, very salesy way. We're just going to show up in a very fun, casual. We had lawn chairs, we had lawn games, and we actually ended up. What we did spend the money on was we actually had bar service happen in our booth for a happy hour. But it was just the coolers opened and they were full of ice and there was cans of beer in them, and that really resonated with that audience. And we were really smart with how we spent the money. I ended up hand carrying all those coolers back to my hotel room after. So it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into it, and a lot of sweat equity. But on the total cost of that event, it was nothing in comparison to something that a conference we would do. And I still think that's how the team approaches events. We think of what is this what does this audience need? What story do we want to tell them? How do we fit in with their narrative, and then how do we empower them or let them come and learn? And
in general, as we wrap up, I'm going to let Alex wrap up in a minute, but are you at the table? I always say that for years, the event world, we were at the children's table for Thanksgiving. And now I think, are you at the strategy table for the most part when you deal with your company?
Yeah, events are a huge part of our company ethos. And it's been the way we've been marketing ourselves for a while now. Back when I started, we called it the IRL team in real life, very internet speak. But the IRL team was, I think, 6 of us, and now we've grown to be a whole part of the marketing org at the company, which just shows you how much events and how much telling the right stories has impacted Shopify.
And it sounds like your input into this has been enormous, and your creativity and ingenuity.
They took a risk on a very, very theatrical, very outside of the box thinker. I think the risk has paid off for them in the long run. Yeah,
sounds great. Keep my stock going up.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
Well, this has been great. So to wrap up, I want to kind of end with a question on a more personal note, Matt, which is putting aside ROI, company benchmarking, and all the, maybe more kind of typical success indicators, especially in the B2B setting. What's your personal sign of knowing that an event is going to lead to lasting change? How do you know that you spark change? What's your feedback? What's the sign for you personally?
I like when people talk about it. When I hear that someone's talked about it after, or it's led to a sales conversation, or if I'm attending an event and they go, "Oh, last year you guys were the ski chalet. You made it snow in here." Okay, then I know I've done my job. That brings me so much joy, knowing that I've had an impact and we've stood out in a very positive way. And hearing that feedback always makes me really happy.
That's great. Well, thanks, Matt. You were a total delight.
Thank you.
I can see why my shares are going through the roof.
I'm not going to take any credit.
Okay, we're back in our podcast studio, David. We heard a lot about thoughtful conference design. One thing that stuck out to me were things like guru appointments. That's one-on-one sessions where people can share issues they might not want to share with the entire group if you're in a competitive situation. The bigger idea, of course, is what do your attendees need and how can you deliver on that?
No, I think he was they really think out everything, and it's nice to watch. It was really, really interesting to see how strategic these guys are and how theatrical they are as well.
Right. I was going to say, don't forget the sense of fun. That's another thing that they reminded us.
Yes. So, Beth, what's going on at BizBash?
Okay, so this is my last plug for BizBash Live Los Angeles. It's this Wednesday, July 24th at the California Market Center in downtown LA. We have a strong lineup of speakers that are addressing trade shows, event marketing, creating safe spaces for attendees and what your responsibility is as an event organizer, as well as over-the-top social entertaining and more. It's also a great time for networking. And I'll note that much of our GatherGeeks podcast team is going to be there. David, you will be there. I will be there. And Claire Hoffman will be as well. So join us there.
Yep. And if you missed that one, there's always the DC event that's going to happen on the 31st of July. And in October, stay tuned for our New York conference.
GatherGeeks IRL.
Yes, right? Yes. So before we end, we want to thank Claire, the aforementioned Claire Hoffman, for helping us on the editorial duties of the podcast. And, of course, Rebecca Pappas, who gets it out to you. And, of course, David Nelson, who is our producer. So what do we say, Beth, as we wrap it up?
Gather on.
Gather on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on.